Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, in which we will provide a preview of the DICE Q3 Tech Job Report, which will publish tomorrow. My name is John Sudicum, and I would like to thank you for joining us today. So before we get going, I just have a few housekeeping items to cover, as always. First, we're going to take a few questions at the end of the webinar, so please submit yours using the control panel. We'll answer as many questions as we can, but if we don't get to yours, we will be sure to follow up via email as soon as we can. Next, there will be a recording of today's webinar sent out later this week, so please do look out for that. Also, we will have a post-webinar survey that will go out after today's session. We always really appreciate this feedback, as this helps us produce the most helpful content for you. So if you have the time, please do submit yours. And one last thing here, part of what we're talking about today is remote work. And the truth be told, I am working remotely right now. I feel pretty confident that my internet will work out for me, but please bear with me if any technical difficulties do pop up. Okay, so here's the plan for today. We are going to kick off with a brief intro of DICE. We'll then move on to looking at the state of tech hiring in the US. And then we're going to shift to taking a deeper dive as we look at specific tech hubs and occupations. We'll then finish today's session by looking at technologist sentiments amidst COVID-19 and how you can use this information to adjust your recruiting strategy. And I also briefly want to introduce DICE. So for those of you that don't know about DICE, I swear I'm going to save you the sales pitch here, but I just want you to know that we make tech hiring easier. We are tech specialists that cut your time to hire by giving you access to qualified professionals and the tools to identify the ones that best fit your needs. So I also want to do a quick summary of some of the points that we're going to hit today. The first of which is that tech hiring is largely stabilized in Q3. And it will be interesting to see how these numbers change as we move into Q4 and beyond. Next, tech unemployment continues to remain steadily low and significantly lower than overall unemployment. Third, many of the top employers are continuing to grow their headcounts, and we're going to cover this in just a few slides. And last, something that we'll talk about later on at length is that many employers appear to be shifting to innovation and new product development, which can be a positive signal for downstream hiring. And every time we do one of these webinars, we do get quite a few questions about our data. So I just quickly want to discuss this to make sure that we're all on the same page. So first, we use our partnership with Burning Glass Technologies to acquire this job posting data. Essentially, Burning Glass scrapes the internet for job postings throughout the country and aggregates them into their platform. Next, we collect the job posting data that meets our specific criteria, which includes new tech job postings during a set time, which in this case is Q3 and Q2. We then pull the data and manipulate it ourselves so that we can make these comparisons. And last, just to give an idea of the type of scale that we're talking about, in Q2 and Q3, there were over 1.5 million new tech job postings throughout the US. And so when we're talking about growth or what's hot in tech, we do set a minimum criteria that a skill or occupation must meet. So rest assured, when we're talking about a specific skill being hot or a specific occupation being hot, it's not growing from 50 job postings to 100, it's more so in the thousands and dozens of thousands. Okay, so let's begin by talking about the state of tech hiring at a national level. So when we look at the first and second quarter, we can see that the year started off very strong with volumes in the range of 400,000 job postings. However, to no surprise, the volumes did decrease significantly in Q2. However, when we look at Q3, rather than a sharp decline, we see signs of stabilization of about 250,000 new tech job postings per month. This may be an indicator that although the pandemic is far from over, businesses are continuing to understand the rules of the pandemic and create the best strategy to operate in an economy that's largely dictated by COVID-19. I'm just going to pause here for everyone to take in this data. And when we look at overall unemployment, we can see the drastic increase in April. Since then, however, we have seen a consistent and gradual decline in overall unemployment. And so when we compare this to tech, we can see that although there was an increase in April, tech unemployment has largely remained steadily low. Since the pandemic, many organizations have doubled down in their efforts to maintain their systems and infrastructure, as well as enhance their digital and e-commerce portal offerings. And all of this requires technologists to get this type of work done. And one of the interesting aspects that I'd like to point out here is that of the top 50 employers, 68% have increased their hiring between Q2 and Q3. While this data isn't conclusive, it suggests that while smaller businesses may be more impacted by the pandemic, larger organizations are actually continuing to grow their headcount. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of nuance to this data. So we're going to explore these nuances first at the city level. So what we have here is a list of the top 20 cities in Q3 based on job posting volume. We also have their relative change in rank from Q2. So for example, Chicago, which is ranked third in Q3, improved its rank by 2 spots since Q2. What we can see here is that Texas and California are both very well represented. San Francisco ranked second, followed by California cities like LA, San Diego, and San Jose. Meanwhile, Texas's hiring is led by Austin and is followed by Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. And here we have some of the top growth cities from August to September, where San Antonio and San Jose led the pack. And overall, we saw that there is quite a bit of growth from August to September. So then what we have here is the apply rate by city, which is data that we obtained through our partnership with Appcast. Here we define apply rate as the percentage of applied clicks that result in a completed application. What we can see here is that San Jose leads the country with an apply rate of 17.7%, followed by Seattle, LA, San Francisco, and Dallas. And so we're about to go into more data as well, and I understand that I've also showed you quite a bit of data. I do just want to remind everyone that we will be sending out a recording of today's webinar, and also that this data can also be found in our upcoming Q3 Tech Job Report, which we'll publish tomorrow. So at this point, we're going to dig into some of the cities in greater detail. And I quickly want to discuss some of the data that we have here, because I know there is quite a bit, as I just said. First, on the left, we have new monthly tech job postings. On the right, we have job posting trends, which includes the apply rate, the growth or decline from August to September, and the growth or decline from Q2 to Q3. In the case of New York City, we can see a steady decline throughout the year, though this makes sense as in many ways New York was seen as the epicenter of the pandemic in the US, at least in the first few months. That translates to a relatively flat performance in Q2 to Q3 and a larger decline from August to September specifically. Meanwhile, the apply rate in New York is at 7%. Here I have some of the top occupations and employers in New York City. For top occupations, these include software developer, network engineer, and project manager. For employers, the list is rather diverse, with Amazon at the top, followed by JP Morgan, Bloomberg, IBM, Deloitte, and Disney. Let's now look at San Francisco. While San Francisco had a steady decline in April and May, we've seen levels fluctuate, which may be a result of stabilization mixed with seasonality. From Q2 to Q3, we saw job postings decrease by 13%. However, the decline was smaller from August to September with a drop of 7%, which suggests a strong end to the quarter. Meanwhile, the apply rate in San Francisco is 10%. When we look at top occupations, it's interesting to see senior software developer make the list, which may be an indicator that employers are looking to build out developer teams once again. It's also interesting to see product manager make the list as well, which could be a strong indicator that businesses are also once again focusing on new product development. Some of the top companies that are hiring in San Francisco include Amazon, Wells Fargo, Splunk, and Twitter. Chicago improved 2 places from Q2 to Q3. When we look at the monthly job posting volumes, we can see that while it had an initial drop caused by COVID, it's gradually improved from May to September. When we look at job posting trends, we can see that Chicago is positive from Q2 to Q3, and more specifically from August to September. We can also see that Chicago's apply rate is at 7%. Some of the top occupations in Chicago include software developer, network engineer, and project manager. Meanwhile, consultancies like IBM, Capgemini, Deloitte, and Accenture are all hiring, which may be a signal that some employers are turning to these consultancies for support rather than hiring full-time technologists. So let's look at Austin now. Known as Silicon Hills, Austin has long been a growing hub for tech companies and startups looking to expand their presence. Where other cities had more drastic declines this year, Austin's has been more gradual. From Q2 to Q3, Austin declined 14%. However, when we look at August to September, we see 5% increase, which signals a positive trend at the end of the quarter. And it'll be interesting how that continues into Q4. Meanwhile, the apply rate is 6% in Austin. Some of the top occupations in Austin include software developer, senior software developer, and network engineer. Meanwhile, some of the top employers include big names like IBM, Amazon, Home Depot, and Apple. Dallas improved 2 places from Q2 to Q3. Its monthly job postings were also in the range of 6,000 job postings before the pandemic, and have since then declined to about 4,000 tech job postings per month. When we look at the job posting trends, we can also see that there were declines. Meanwhile, the apply rate in Dallas is 7%. The top occupations in Dallas include software developer, network engineer, project manager, and more. Meanwhile, the top employers include consultancies that I've previously mentioned, as well as Salesforce and Raytheon. So at this point, we're going to shift gears to discuss what's happening within occupations. Here we have the top 20 occupations by job posting volume in Q3. Again, we also have the change in rank in the middle columns, which shows how many places each occupation shifted from Q2 to Q3. Here we're not seeing much fluctuation among the top occupations. Software developer was first, followed by project manager, network engineer, and systems engineer. However, it's also interesting to see program manager improved by 4 places, senior business analyst improved by 5 places, and tech support engineer improved by 6 places. Here we have job posting growth from August to September to show how the quarter rounded out. And right away, I would like to make a couple callouts. First, it's interesting to see senior level roles like IT director, software development manager, and cybersecurity manager all make the list. This could be an indication that employers are beginning to build out new teams, starting with senior professionals. So it will be interesting to see if more associate level roles and middle level roles begin to rise in the coming months. Another point I'll make is that software product managers' growth can be an indication that employers are shifting towards new product development and innovation. And here we have occupations by apply rate. Now, it's interesting to see software developer, business analyst, and data engineer lead the list here, as these jobs have some of the highest job posting volumes as well. It's also interesting to see more specialized roles like cybersecurity engineer make the list as well. And at this point, we're going to go deeper into some of these occupations, but I once again do want to remind everyone that we will be sending out a recording of today's webinar. I understand this is quite a bit of data to take in all at once. So now as I said, we're going to take a deep dive into these occupations. So let's start with the ubiquitous tech role, which is software developer. Every time we pull job posting data, software developer always tops the list with pretty significant volumes. And as we can see here, the volumes were at about 45,000 new tech job postings per month in the beginning of the year. So when we look at Q2 to Q3, we can see a decline, though when you compare August to September, we can see that the quarter did end relatively strong. Meanwhile, the apply rate for this role is 11%. As a result of the demand for software developers, the average time to fill is about 48 days. Meanwhile, some of the top employers include Amazon, IBM, and Boeing. And so as I mentioned, the idea of innovation and new product development, this is perhaps best exemplified by program manager. With this occupation, we've seen a checkmark-shaped recovery in the monthly data. Specifically from Q2 to Q3, job postings increased by 17%. Meanwhile, the average time to fill for this role comes in at 46 days, and some of the top employers include Anthem Blue Cross, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, and Dell. And so continuing this theme of innovation, software development manager increased 19% from Q2 to Q3, with a 9% growth taking place between August and September. And so when we look at the shape of that graph, we're seeing levels that are higher than April, getting close to March. This growth can also be tied into our theme of senior level growth. And this data may be an indication that software developer roles will increase in the coming quarters as software development managers begin to build out their teams. When we look at the top employers for this role, we're seeing a lot of tech giants make this list, specifically Amazon, Microsoft, and Facebook. In addition to the average time to fill for this role is about 48 days. Since the pandemic, we've seen many employers focus their efforts on maintaining systems, networks, and infrastructure. And this may explain network engineers' monthly job posting graphs looking much more gradual than other roles here. And while there was some decline from Q2 to Q3, we can see that August to September demonstrates positivity. Meanwhile, the apply rate for this role is 5%. The average time to fill for network engineers is 46 days. And meanwhile, some of the top employers include Amazon, IBM, Humana, and Deloitte. Nowadays, data is infinitely important and useful to businesses. And as a result, they need data analysts that can make sense of vast amounts of information. Since April, data analyst job postings have largely stabilized, although the numbers do show declines from Q2 to Q3 and August to September. And because this role requires certain skills like SQL and Python, the time to fill for data analysts is about 48 days. Meanwhile, some of the top employers include Anthem, IBM, Deloitte, and General Dynamics. Since May, we've seen product manager job postings increased substantially from 6,000 job postings to close to 8,000. Specifically, from Q2 to Q3, job postings increased by 18%, with a 1% increase from August to September. All this points to a turn towards new product development for a lot of employers. Meanwhile, the apply rate for this role is about 7%. As a result of the broad knowledge and importance of this role, the average time to fill is 51 days, which is a few days higher than these other occupations that we've seen. Additionally, some of the top employers include Anthem, Amazon, Dell, PayPal, VMware, and Facebook. So amidst the shutting down of offices and entire companies switching to dispersed remote working models, cyber criminals have attempted to take advantage of the situation with phishing emails and other methods of attack. As a response, businesses have largely needed to increase their cybersecurity strategy and hiring, which is why we might see the increase in job postings in June there. Additionally, the apply rate for this role is 4%. As a result of the specialized nature of this occupation, the average time to fill comes in at 47 days. Meanwhile, the top employers include Northrop Grumman, Anthem, PayPal, and Raytheon. So at this point, I would like to switch topics, and I'd like to talk about technologist sentiment. So a lot has changed over the past few months and the ways that employers and employees are operating. And we think it's pretty valuable to dig into some of these nuances and changes. And at DICE, we've taken these changing times to poll candidates and capture their thoughts amidst COVID-19. To do so, we capture data every 2 weeks and published our findings on our Insights blog, which I certainly do encourage everyone here to access for more information. But let's dig into the numbers at this point. So first, many technologists are finding that their workload has increased, and in some cases up to twice as much. Given today's circumstances, many employers have used it as an opportunity to further develop their e-commerce portals and their digital offering. So it's not surprising to see that technologists have largely had increased workloads to get these types of projects completed. And related to that, we found that technologists generally feel that they have job security. Additionally, of the technologists that are currently employed, we can see that roughly 32% plan to actively search for a new job within the next 2 weeks. And when it comes to how COVID-19 has changed what technologists consider important in a job, quite a bit has shifted in their perspective. For example, company leadership has increased in the minds of technologists. For us, this makes a lot of sense, as company leadership has had to act quickly and use their best judgment to set their teams up for success. A lot of eyes have been on company leadership, and it's likely that your candidates will want to know more about these individuals during the recruiting process. So with this in mind, we certainly think that it would be useful for you to have information ready on these individuals. It's also important to note that a company's COVID-19 response is important to technologists. We often see updates in the news related to layoffs, furloughs, salary cuts, and other types of events. Technologists clearly take note of these company events, and they place value on how potential employers are navigating these times. And last, technologists overwhelmingly believe that remote work is more important now, as this is the highest ranked response. Moving forward, technologists are perhaps more likely to be more selective of the companies that they will work for based off of their remote work policies. But let's take a few slides to really unpack what we're seeing here. So here at DICE, we've been collecting information on remote work preferences for years. And it's been pretty clear to us over the years that this is something that technologists have historically really valued and looked at in an employer. And while many employers maintained in-office work policies for years, they were forced nearly overnight to adopt work from home policies for the foreseeable future. So given these changes, we at DICE gathered information around remote work sentiment from technologists with a survey that also went out every 2 weeks. So let's look at some of these findings. First, we collected data on which types of work technologists consider most desirable. Overwhelmingly, we can see that technologists prefer part-time flex work and 100% remote work compared to 100% in-office work, which is what we're seeing there in the gray on the left. So we also collected data on how much technologists actually enjoy working remotely full-time now that they've had the opportunity to do so. And what we found is that technologists almost overwhelmingly enjoy working from home. So it's not just a theoretical thing for them. In practice, they're actually enjoying it. And one common thought around remote work is that it can be a detriment to company culture. And this does make sense in a certain way. If employees are dispersed and if the company doesn't make added efforts, this can certainly be the case. However, what we did find is that technologists generally do not see remote work as a detriment to company culture. As you can see on the right there, only 15% of respondents to our survey said that it's a detriment or extreme detriment to company culture. And again, this certainly does hinder on what an individual employer is doing, though these type of results are certainly significant. Technologists also recognize a range of professional benefits when it comes to remote work. At the furthest left, with the most votes, technologists find it easier to work at home. What's also interesting is that many technologists find that they're more productive while working remotely. While this is sure to vary based on certain factors, like do you have kids in the house, things like that, it's pretty fascinating to learn that productivity levels are rising in some cases. We also wanted to gather information around the personal benefits of remote work. So it's pretty clear that the ability to save time on and essentially have no commute is a significant benefit for technologists. I personally know of individuals who travel more than an hour to their office. So I definitely understand the appreciation for a shorter or no commute. It's also interesting to see that schedule control and work-life balance play a role as well. One thing that was clear from our 2020 Tech Salary Report is that work-life balance is not only an important factor to technologists who are searching for jobs, but poor work-life balance is a primary contributor to dissatisfaction in searching for a new job. Last, it's also worth noting that technologists are saying that they're also receiving more time with family given these circumstances. Although I think some might admit that if they have children, these circumstances also present a new set of challenges. And while there's certainly many benefits to remote work, we also wanted to gather information on what some of the cons are of remote work. And we talked about work-life balance before, but we found that work-life balance was also something that was a con as well. So things like working hours and difficulty separating work from your personal life is something that certainly resonated with a con for technologists. It's also interesting that many technologists believe that it's harder to develop working relationships with their colleagues as well. And because remote work is so highly valued by technologists, we also asked technologists how much of a salary cut they would take to work remotely. And while most technologists said that they would not take a salary cut, roughly 25% said that they would take a cut of 5 to more than 25% to work remotely. So we are going to take questions, and before we do so, I do quickly want to go over a few ways that I think DICE can help given these different pieces of data that I presented. First, with our remote jobs functionality, you can easily post your remote jobs and get more exposure to searches. And this type of functionality helps you engage more candidates and gain more job views. This can be especially helpful for occupations and skills that are more specialized or might have a longer time to fill. It's also worth pointing out that once a technologist views a remote job, they apply at nearly 3 times the rate. Next, with Talent Search, we help you engage with over 2.7 million unique and actionable DICE tech candidates. At the same time, you can also leverage our tech-specific predictive analytics to easily find the right candidate at the right time for the right opportunity. And last, between our expertly curated sourcing services and our unmatched experience creating career events designed to attract best-in-class technologists, discovering the perfect candidate is now easier than ever. So at this point, I would like to say thank you for joining us. I'll also do my final reminder that we will send a recording of today's webinar out on Friday. You can also find the Q3 Tech Job Report tomorrow, which will be published on our website. And we'll also be sending out emails for that as well throughout this week. So at this point, I would like to open up for questions. And I just like ask everyone to bear with me as I go through all the questions and try and answer all of them as well. So the first question is, why do I think product development moved up so much in Q3? And so, as I said a couple of times in today's webinar, we believe that this is a shift towards businesses moving towards new product development and innovation. It was quite interesting to see software development manager increase so much. So we do think that in the coming months and quarters, we are going to see more tech job postings for software engineers and software developers as these managers begin to build out their teams. So I do have a question here regarding compensation. We do not cover compensation with this specific report, though I would certainly like to set a reminder here that we will be publishing our DICE Tech Salary Report in early 2020, and that certainly does go into compensation trends at length, so please do look out for that. I have another question here that is asking, I was asking about the stat in which is 68% of top employers posted more jobs in Q3 than they did in Q2. And so it's asking what, if anything, does that signal? So we're certainly acknowledging that the pandemic has been quite difficult for a lot of startups and smaller employers, and depending on specific industries, it's been very difficult for certain businesses, though. With the top employers in Q3, it was certainly significant to see that 68% have increased their hiring since Q2. And so this does show us that a lot of these employers are charging ahead with new product development, with making sure that that they have data analysts and cybersecurity engineers, basically well-rounded technologists that can ensure that their company is continuing to run. I was asked to once again define apply rate. So the way that we define apply rate here is someone that clicked on a job posting and then also completed that job posting. And once again, that data does come from our partnership with Appcast. I also have a question here that states, can you share the list of top 50 employers that provides backup for your slide number 13, which ties into our 68% of employers that are increasing their tech job postings since Q2. I do not have that list on me, though. That will be included in our Q3 Tech Job Report, which we'll publish tomorrow. So you can certainly get that list of employers there. Thank you for bearing with me as I go through all these questions. Some of these are a little specific and asking for information on specific occupations. While I do not have that information on me currently, that is something that we can certainly look at for future tech job reports and future webinars. So thank you for posting those requests. So I have a question here that is, do you see any increased trends in hiring for entry-level roles? The short answer is we haven't seen a specific trend in that, or that's not something that we've explicitly looked for. Though this does come back to a statement that I made earlier, which is that we've seen growth in these more senior level roles in this quarter, and specifically from August to September. So one belief that we have, or our hypothesis, is that mid-level roles will increase over the next few months potentially. It would also, with this in mind, it would not be surprising to see junior level roles increase as well. So I think the remainder of the questions that I have here are a little bit more specific, and we certainly will answer these, though it may take us going through the data ourselves to get back to you on some of these questions. So at this point, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to say thank you very much for joining us. Please do look out for the Q3 Tech Job Report tomorrow, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. Thank you for joining us.